You've heard me talk about this before in the podcast, but what if we fed our hair with the same nourishing ingredients that we feed our bodies? I've been using simple superfood-inspired products from Hair Food, and I have seen amazing results. I've talked to you before about this on the show, about the shampoos and conditioners that they have, but this summer, because of all the lake water and chlorine, I've added avocado and argan oil hair mask to my regimen. And hello, my hair feels so smooth, shiny, and healthy. What I love is every Hair Food product is free of sulfates, parabens, dyes, mineral oils, and is certified PETA, cruelty-free, because your hair does not want to be eating that stuff. Not only are their products free of the bad stuff, but they're full of high-quality superfood ingredients, and they smell amazing. So if you're looking for nourished, healthy hair, it's got to be Hair Food. Look for it at Amazon, Walmart, and Target. Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant. Happy to be back with you from our summer. Can you believe it? We are already in the end of, or I should say, the third week of August. We are on podcast number 276 this week. It's so good to be back. I know we've done a lot of shows for the last, I think it was the last 6 or so shows. We have taken some of the best and played them for you, and we are back with a brand new show today. We're talking all about, yes, sirree, my favorite topic, one of my favorites. And I think this is one of your favorites because we get a lot of emails in about this. Raising teenagers from the adult chair. Yes, I have a special guest today, Dr. Pam Staples. Pam is phenomenal. She has worked with teens a very long time. We touched on so many different topics around teens, and many of them are the topics that you all have written in about, which are things like, how do you deal with drinking and drugs with your teenagers, setting limits and boundaries? How do we discipline these little beings, sometimes that feel like little monsters? What do we do with these kids that became, they go from being our little angels to then become these people that we just don't know, or they're just growing up? How do we help them really transition from this little adolescent kid to this healthy adult? And a lot of it has to do with really letting go and letting them become whoever it is that they're here to be. You'll hear me talk about that some. And also, we touched on grief, because you know what? As these kids grow up and get ready to leave the nest, whether it means they're going in college or they're going into their own apartment or just moving out or whatever they're doing, there's grief. And I don't think a lot of people talk about the grief that comes up for us as parents when these life transitions happen for these kids. There are babies and all of a sudden they're not. So we even touch on that. So lots to talk about today. And on a little side note here, I just want to say I had to pop into my little Apple app yesterday, and I was blown away at all the lovely 5-star reviews you guys have given me and the comments. I took a long time and I sat and read all these lovely comments. I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate all the comments and for people that take the time to do that. And thank you for sharing the show. I really feel like I'm on this mission and you guys are on the mission with me to really help the world to live in a healthier place. That's what the adult chair is all about. It's teaching people how to live as emotionally healthy adults. most of us didn't get that training very well or modeling very well. So, and some of us had really nice, lovely childhoods, but we didn't learn how to feel our emotions, or we're now codependent, but we're lovely people, or we're in relationships that are love addicted, or we're with a narcissist, or we don't know how to set boundaries, or we don't know how to speak up for ourselves, or don't know how to have healthy relationships. This podcast covers all of that and then some. It's all about living as a healthy, emotionally healthy adult, I should say. So thank you for being here if you're new, and thank you for being here if you are one of my old timers who've been with me for a long time. I just really appreciate all of you guys. So the only thing I want to share with all of you, in case you have not heard, the Adult Chair Coaching Certification is opened, and we are looking for people that would like to be coaches. So if you're interested, head over to theadultchair.com/certification. We are taking applications for this. So if you're somebody that really is ready for a career change, that is passionate about helping other people live as emotionally healthy adults, this is the program for you. I'm excited to say this is our second year, and I'm so passionate about this work, and it's just an honor to teach other people how to do this. And we're spreading this around the world. So come one, come all. I don't care what your background is. I will teach you how to do this work. It is incredible work. So theadultchair.com/certification, and keep your eye out. I'm going to be doing some live streams on Instagram and Facebook about this for anyone that has questions, and also some live Q&As. So let's talk about teenagers. I want to introduce our guest today, Dr. Pam Staples. She's a psychologist from Minneapolis, Minnesota. She has a master's and doctoral degree in psychology, and she's had the honor and pleasure of working with teens for her entire 37-year career. This woman knows all about teenagers. I think you're going to love what she has to say. She's grounded, she's knowledgeable, and she's going to help you with your teens. She loves to watch them transform and help them to become healthy adults. So here we go with Pam Staples and helping you to raise really healthy teens. Here we go. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Dr. Pam Staples.
It's so good to be with you, Michelle.
I know. I know it's good to be with me, right? It's good to be with you too. You and I, we just love each other, I think, right? Like we're sisters from another place and time for sure. I love my time with you. I'm so grateful that you have decided to come and impart your wisdom with teenagers with us. How do I say that? You're imparting your wisdom on us, with us today? What's the probably with. Okay, you're imparting your wisdom with us today. We need to I'm really excited for this discussion. We get a lot of questions in about teenagers. And I know you've worked with teenagers. What is it? 37
years.
Wow. Yeah. So you know a lot. Yeah. And I so respect your work. You're one of the best out there. So I'm looking forward to our discussion today. All right. Let's just dive right in, Pam. So a lot happens when children become teenagers. We all see it. We see things that children go from these little precious, little vulnerable babies, and they're so sweet and kind. And then something starts happening in middle school. We start seeing they first of all physically change, hormones start coming on, all of this is going on. And then they hit 9th grade. So I really am going to focus today on teenagers, high school, and really transitioning these kids from home into college or into next phase of life if they're not going to do college, whatever that is. I want to talk with you today about how, as parents, we can really live in our adult chairs and do this as best we can for our kids and in the healthiest way. Because what we want to do, of course, is model healthy behavior, healthy adult living for these teenagers so then they can leave the nest and then they become healthy. So tell us what the heck happens in high school, because our little precious babies sometimes can become, they talk back. They're doing all these things that we're like, who are these kids? Especially as they get closer to junior, senior year, I'm finding. But what's going on? Like, tell us a little bit about what's going on in their brains and their bodies so that we as parents can understand really. And if someone's listening to this that has a younger child, I want to help them understand what's coming, like what's to come. So anything at all you want to share about that?
Sure. I think that once they hit adolescence, they start turning away from the family and turning more toward their peer group. And so parents have to recognize that they're not the sole influencers in their teenagers' lives. And so they have to recognize that there's a whole nother system that their teenager is dwelling in. And so I think that's an important piece. And they're also going from being taught and told how to be and what to do to trying to find their way in knowing what to do and trying to find their voice, trying to find their inner voice in the world. So they're coming into the world and they're trying to find their way. And
talk about what inner voice means. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's kind of like they're trying to find their own compass, their own true north, their GPS.
Like they're would you say that might be like their true self? Like, really, who am I? Like, they don't really know. And then when they get out in the world and they're with their peers, the peers start reflecting who they are in a very different way than, let's say, our family would. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. Well, I think that adolescent stage, especially 9th through 12th grade, is such a period of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And so I think they're discovering themselves. And they need to be given some wide berth in order to do that. And the term helicopter parenting, that does really exist. And so, I have to tell parents to don't hover so close anymore. Give them some space, give them some room to grow and be. And so that they have that internal process that they can have going into their adulthood.
Yeah, because, and I've said this before to parents when I saw parents that had teens and they were coming in asking me, what do I do? I came up with this sort of metaphor or analogy. When babies are born, they're on a 1-lane expressway and we are the guardrails with that 1-lane expressway. And then as these kids grow up, as parents, we widen the lanes. We are still their guardrails on that expressway, but the expressway goes from a 1-lane expressway to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And by the time they're in high school, we're still there, but we've got to give them room to go through 8 to 10 different lanes on the expressway and then let them bounce into those guardrails. Those are our boundaries, but they need to explore. They need to learn how to do life without us as parents interfering so much, because we want them to have that God-given intuition turn on or stay on. Mm-hmm. And I said this before, I'm like, and if in the helicopter parents, this is where I think it's such a disservice. Helicopter parents take away and smother the kid's intuition. And I said this before, if my kid, and this did happen with my older son, I remember, when the kid is turning, let's say 17, 16, 17, which is terrifying because now they're getting in a car with another teenager, that their head is in the clouds and they've got to go drive somewhere. It's like, oh my God. And are they drinking? What are they doing? I want to make sure that my kid's intuition is on enough so that kid is going to say, I don't think this is a good idea. Something feels bad inside. I'm not going to get in the car. So-and-so's been drinking, or something feels off. I'm not just going to go. So that is what I want to say to helicopter parents. I know these helicopter parents love their children.
Absolutely.
Worry about our children. Like, I'm not saying it's not about that. It's not saying love them less, worry less, but it is saying let them go a little bit more and let them fail and fall down so they can learn under your roof.
Exactly. Yeah. So I tell parents that they need to turn into more of a teacher and a guide and a mentor. As they let their kids grow up and become who they're supposed to be. And the helicopter parenting is a disservice for sure.
And this is where I've had to say to a lot of the parents that I've worked with, and I don't say this in any judging way whatsoever, but as parents, it's time possibly if you feel something inside of you when you're pulling away from being a helicopter parent to do your own work around that. Like there's a grieving process that even begins when these kids are freshmen in high school or even before, letting go of these kids as they're growing up. There's grief. It's like, wait a minute, you wanted to spend every weekend with me. Now you want to spend time with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or you want to go with your friends. What about me? I was the greatest thing in your life, but not anymore. That's hard. And nobody prepares us for this.
Right. And the other thing too is in my career, I've watched the generational divide compress. And so parents and kids are closer to each other than they've ever been.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that there's this quality of friendship that also goes on with parents and their teenagers. And I think it's losing that friendship part, because their friends start to matter more than the parents. I call it second family. And they need their second family as a bridge to their adult life. Because if they don't create second family, then there's no bridge to their adult life of independence and being launched into the world. So you don't want kids just to be dependent on their parents. And yeah.
And I've said to parents or kids that I've even seen, and I've never saw a lot of teens, but when I hear someone say, my mom is my best friend or my dad is my best friend, I cringe. I'm like, no. Not that you can't be close with your parents. It's not what I'm saying, but no to the best friend. No, that was me too with my mom. And it was so dysfunctional looking back. I called my mom numerous times a day when I was in my 20s. I remember I couldn't function without her. We were so enmeshed and codependent. It was so unhealthy, but so it wasn't healthy. That's not in balance. So we want to make sure that we're really letting go of these kids, creating that larger, expressway for them and letting them, do what they're going to do, but fail. So lots of questions around this always. What do you do when your kid starts pushing your limits?
You celebrate it.
I love that. Tell me more.
Because it's a sign of them wanting to become who they're supposed to become.
Love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. So kids, in order for them to differentiate and individuate, they need to push off of something. And it's going to be the family. And it might be one parent more than another. It might be the whole family. It depends. But the individuation, differentiation is essential to them becoming who they're supposed to become. And if that's interfered with, then the trajectory of their growth and transformation as kids to adults gets screwed up.
So what would you say to someone, like, what are some appropriate boundaries for kids that are entering into high school? And I'm sure it changes with every year, but what are some healthy boundaries that parents should have or could have with their kids? Because I've worked with parents that have like my husband had no boundaries. He was a junior in high school coming home at 3 a.m. and no one said anything to him. And then, I had to be home by midnight, which of course I pushed against that. So where's the middle ground? Because I also hear and then in my family growing up, this is going back a lot younger, like my dad was always worried I was going to get sick. I wasn't even allowed to go on sleepovers till I was 12 years old, Pam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a little too smothering. So where's as parents, there's so many books out there, but what is your experience with how to, as parents, when they're entering into high school, what's appropriate? What are some appropriate boundaries? Let's talk about curfews. Let's talk about drinking. Let's talk about having sex. They're doing all this stuff. So what as parents are we supposed to be doing?
Well, I think the younger teen needs more guardrail. And then I think, like you said, with your highway metaphor, maybe 9th grade is 2 lanes, 10th is 3, 11th is 4, senior year is, super highway. So I think when kids start high school, I think parents should sit down with their kids and talk to them about that they're going to be exposed to lots of possibilities and choices that they'll make. And I think they should have discussions about alcohol, drugs, sex, and and even some maybe friendships. So I think that like even dating, like what age can you date? So I think that kids should be given what the expectations are for that particular family. And then it creates an opportunity for future dialogue when kids go outside of those boundaries. So I think it varies from family to family and parent to parent about it. But I think when parents create too harsh or too rigid of boundaries, that's not always good for kids. So I think it's important to create flexible boundaries where you allow for that teaching, mentoring, and guiding aspect of parenting.
I love that.
So, yeah.
Teaching, mentoring, and guiding.
Yeah.
Versus disciplining, punishing, all of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do when when you find out that your kid was at a party and they're in, let's say 11th grade, and they come home and they're drunk? And what do you say to that parent? How do they, again, I'm hearing you say it really depends on the family, what the boundaries are, but boundaries are necessary. We need to have boundaries, whether it be your kid's supposed to come home at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, and this is okay and that's not okay. What do you say to these kids that are coming home and they're drunk?
Well, if they're really drunk, I would say, go to bed and we'll talk about this in the morning.
Right. That's true.
I don't think I'd want to have a conversation with a drunk kid.
No way. That's true. That's true.
But I think that if parents can, instead of being shocked and horrified that their kid came home drunk, it'd be great if they could sit back and just take a breath and be able to have a conversation with that kid about, so what happened? How did this happen? How much did you drink? Why? How were you affected by it? Do you think you'd want to do that again? And so just really talk to them about, so then they get back to their internal GPS, their intuition. Mm-hmm. So when you ask them these curious questions, because I think curiosity is a really great approach with kids. And if you can have that stance of curiosity, then they're not going to feel defensive, and that they might be open to having that dialogue. And if you create that dialogue, then you're in. I mean, you're in, and they'll talk to you, they'll confide in you. But if you're going to judge them or punish them or whatever, well, then they're going to just go deeper underground. And then when kids go underground with their peer group and you can't reach them, then they can get lost to you. And you don't want that to happen.
That is such a great point. Really staying like stable.
Yes.
When they've done something that is like so stupid. I remember with my own two boys, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with them? Why are they acting so stupid? But I know their brain chemistry, the hormones, the whole 9 yards. I'm like, I remember my younger son was in like 10th grade or 11th grade. He had snuck out of the house. Maybe he was a little bit younger. And they went ding dong ditching naked. And I'm like, at 3 a.m. And I'm like, I wanted to scream at him, like, are you some kind of idiot? Like, hello, people have guns now. You're going to get shot. People who rings doorbells at 3 a.m. Like, it's terrifying. And not only that, everyone has the Ring doorbell.
Oh, right.
Video cameras and you're naked. You stupid. Like, I was like, oh, I wanted to say that. I did not. I sat and I was like, okay, so do you think that was a really good idea? Mom, it was a good idea because, and he had all these reasons why he thought it was a good idea. I was like, hello. But they do these things, when they're.
But you have to think about it though. Teenagers, they're that whole developmental stage is a grand experiment. And so they're experimenting and they're figuring out where the lines are. They're figuring out where the boundaries are for themselves. They know when it's too far, but sometimes they have to cross that. And I call it learning the hard way.
Yes.
There are some kids, I call them hard way kids. They only learn the hard way. It's like, so they're the experiential learners.
Yes.
Who kind of have to experience it to learn it. And then there are these other kids who can just kind of know better. But they all need some guidance and, like I said, teaching and mentoring.
I want to say something to parents that I think is of the utmost importance, which is we want to be for our kids that safe place to land, like no matter what.
Absolutely.
So that when they are having thoughts of whatever, anxiety, they don't understand it, or depression or suicide, God forbid, or I want to drink too much, or I'm having issues with this kid is pushing drugs on me, or my girlfriend or boyfriend wants me to have sex. We want them to come back to us. And the way, please, I want to talk about this. So correct me if I'm wrong or add to this, but the way that we do that is to not overreact when they bring this information to us, to be, in my opinion, almost stoic. Like I remember when my kids would come to me and I'd go, even when my younger one was naked ding dong ditching with his friends and sneaking out in Ubers at night, doing all this crap, I would sit down very calmly, not always. Sometimes I was not perfect. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to claim to be perfect, not a perfect mother, but I really did my best to say, hey, what were you thinking? What's going on? And I did a lot of the questions. And what I found was, I want to say this to parents, and I did a whole podcast on this with my older son. I remember he would say some things to me that I inside was like, holy blankety blank. And I would just sit there, not smiling, not yelling.
Yep.
And okay. And the more we can be this, as my sister calls the Botox brow, you just sit there with no expression on your face. It's like, the more you can sit there like that and go, all right, tell me more. Okay. And be quiet. I call it masterful listening, where we sit and we're mirroring like, wow. So you're saying your friend Jackson was doing cocaine. Okay. Yeah. And then I'd be quiet. And then all of a sudden something else would come. And I'm making up the name Jackson, by the way, if anyone's listening to this, I'm just making that name up. But there was an instance where my son did say this. Okay. Or so-and-so, they were drinking way too much and they passed out and had to go to the hospital. I was like, wow. Okay. And the less I said, it was fascinating. The more he talked, the more he was like, blah, 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 like, oh yeah. And then this happens. And the more I just sat there, I remember I was sitting in his bedroom. He sat and talked to me for 30 freaking minutes. Normally, he didn't say very much, but he just kept purging. And I think he wanted to share. Oh yeah. And did I tell you this one? I'm like, no, I hadn't heard that. Wow, that's interesting. So he takes, Xanax every day. Wow. Okay. It was like one thing after the next. And then at the end, he goes, this was a great talk, Mom. And I had said like nothing except for mirroring. Phenomenal though. So I felt so good when I left. I was like, I can't believe all the intel I just got right now. So
I know, right?
Talk about that a little bit. Like, do you agree? Like, we need to be that for our kids so they can fall back on us.
Right. So as they're out doing all this experimenting, they do need a touchstone. They do need a safety net, and it should be the parents. And if the parent can be that open source of comfort, really, because that safety that they get is a source of comfort for them. They know that it's always there and it's consistent and constant. So it's kind of almost like an adolescent version of object constancy. They know they can always go to that parent, and that parent is going to listen and be curious and turn as much of this into a learning opportunity for that kid. So, that's what I think is most important is, how can you turn this into a teaching opportunity for the parent and a learning opportunity for the teenager? And that feels really good for both the parent and the teenager. So I know the parents listening are going to be like, but when do you set a boundary? Like, do you have consequences and punishment? Talk about that a little bit. At what point do you go there with your kids? Well, there are what I call high trust kids who don't need a lot of consequences because they kind of have a good internal guidance system. And then there are kids who break trust with their parents more than anybody wants. And so with kids who have a more difficulty managing themselves, then I think there need to be more boundaries. So one of the things that I recommend is like, right now a school year is beginning. It's a perfect time for parents to sit down with their kids and talk about drugs, alcohol, boyfriend, girlfriend, dating, sex, and anything else that's in their world that they might need some help with school, academics, whatever. And so with kids who have a hard time managing things, I have recommended when they're in low trust that they get, like, say, for example, they get caught drinking in ninth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't want your kids to be drinking too much in ninth grade. So I think the consequence should be fairly big, just to show them we mean it. So sometimes parents have to use a consequence to really communicate we mean it. And so it might be that they are grounded for a few days, or you take away something, that's
meaningful for them.
Right. But you don't want to do it for too long. You just want it to you want the message to get across, because prolonged consequences can be discouraging and demoralizing. And then kids lose trust in their parents. So the trust has to come on both sides here, because parents can't break trust by being too harsh or too overdone on their consequences. So then I recommend that parents, like, say, for alcohol, the first offense is this, second offense is that. And if you are going into third offense, you might need help.
Yeah.
Especially with drinking or drugs, because kids can be pretty clever. And so if they're getting caught, it means they're not being very clever. Mm-hmm. And it might mean that they're struggling actually with figuring out how to use chemicals. And so they might need help. So those are the kids where I recommend that there's a more structured approach to helping them manage themselves. It's not about you managing them. It's about you are teaching them to manage themselves. And oftentimes that first offense, second offense, third offense, I've been teaching that to parents for decades, really works well. Really.
And also to remember that each child, if you have multiple kids in the home, you can't parent the kids exactly the same. Each kid is so unique. Each personality of the kid is so unique. So
absolutely.
I know for my younger son, we could take away soccer and he would just die. Like, he just could not handle not going to soccer. Where the older son, when I'd pull soccer, I couldn't even pull soccer practice away. He could care less, So it really depends on that kid. And you have to really parent each kid differently and really tighten up those boundaries. Like you said, if there is a lot of drinking or something else going on in the house. And so you're not saying, I just want to be clear again, we're not saying don't do anything. Ever.
Right.
We really have to manage and watch these kids closely, but do it not from a controlling place. Because when they do go to college, if they go to college or leave the nest and get married when they're 18, whatever the heck it is that your kid's doing, we don't want them to go hog wild. And I hear this.
Right.
My older son, his parents were so controlling. This kid went to college, and within a month of being in college, he was hospitalized for drinking.
Yep.
And this happens. You want to I'm not saying to ever buy your kid alcohol or encourage them to drink alcohol.
No, right.
Nothing like that.
Right.
So go ahead.
So I think that parents actually should set up senior year as a way of really helping their kids transition to a more independent life, and not just, like, let them go hog wild, but by the time they're seniors, they probably experimented with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And so they've got some wisdom under their belt. And so I think you should let them use their wisdom. And so I'm kind of a fan of late curfews, no curfews with high trust kids. And then,
what is a late curfew?
Well, for seniors, it could be like 1 o'clock, 1 a.m.
Okay.
2 a.m. even on weekends. But I like seeing these kids with no curfew, because guess what? They set their own curfew.
Yes.
They do.
Which again, when you go off on your own, when you're 18, wherever you're going, when you leave the house, you're going to need to learn how to do that anyway.
Right. Because they figure out how much sleep they need. They figure stuff out, and
it's so true.
It makes them ready to go. Yeah.
So true. So true.
And so yeah, I'm a fan of letting them have a lot of freedom. But the one thing that I do insist on when I work with parents and kids on what I call it a high trust plan, is that the kid always lets their parents know where they are, because the parents worry about their safety. And so I call it whereabouts. Just let your parents know where you are and who you're with in a general kind of way. These parents who track their kids on their phones, I'm not a fan of that at all. Because I really do think that when kids will work around that and they'll find ways to work around that. But I think the kids who can handle their independence in their senior year have a much better successful transition to their college life or whatever it is they choose to do when they leave home.
I didn't even think about that because so many parents, of course, track their kids now. I mean, there's a million apps out there to do that. But the kid knowing that their mother or father are not tracking them, I'm realizing I never thought of it, but inside the kid, they probably feel like, wow, I'm really on my own here. Nobody's watching over my shoulder. No, I'm really having to take more responsibility. So it must do something for that kid when they're seniors.
Yeah. Well, to me, the trade-off is you get more freedom and independence as a teenager if you take care of your parents' worry about you by giving you their whereabouts. And so I have a lot of kids I work with where the parents are constantly texting them, where are you? What are you doing? And I go, oh no, you got to trade this up. The kid is the one to let you know where they are. Mm-hmm. And you do not text them and chase them down and figure out where they are. And so that it builds trust.
And if the kid doesn't check in, then what? A conversation. And anything else?
Well, can I tell you this, that most kids are willing to do that because they would rather give the parent information than being tracked or chased. I mean, I've worked with some kids where parents are texting them constantly while they're gone with their friends. And it's such an invasion of their privacy, if you ask me. It's a violation, if you ask me.
I think so too.
So it's kind of like kids are willing to do that to get their freedom.
I love this idea. And this leads us right into the conversation about letting go.
Yes.
It's really, again, it's letting go of these kids so they can become whoever it is that they're here to become.
Right.
And I hope every parent hears me say this. I didn't say, so our kids can become who we think they should become. That's not what I'm saying. It's who the kid is here to become. And we have to get out of the way with our children. They have their own destiny. They have their own life path. They have their own, in my opinion, their own soul that's got a purpose and a mission to be here. And we've got to get the hell out of the way because let me tell you, I'm sorry, I'm on a little bit of a soapbox. Let me step down.
You go.
And I'm going to say this to every parent, and it's freaking hard work as parents to let go because they are our babies.
Right.
And it's so much pressure. I've talked about this on another show from, I think, a couple of years ago when my older son, Graham, who's now almost 24, was in high school. He was for their whole senior year. Again, even the school kind of lets up on the kids a little bit more and says, if you miss less, because everyone has senioritis, of course, they don't want to go to school. They've already gotten into college. They don't need to go to high school anymore. So my son didn't want to go to high school anymore. He had huge senioritis. And if the kids missed more than 5 days of school, then they'd have to take their final exams, the first semester and second semester. So I was more invested in that than my son was. So I'd go upstairs like, why are you still in bed? You got to get to school. I think I'm sick again. I can't go to school today. What? You're going to have to take finals. You've missed 3 days, 4 days. Guess what? On the 5th day, he was missing. I said, what are you doing? You have to go. No, I think I'm sick again. This happened, so many times. What I would get sometimes, like on the 4th and the 5th time, like wild woman with him. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You're going to have to take finals. You're going to be one of the few kids. Who the heck wants to miss? Do you want to take finals? And he'd be like, leave me alone. Like these huge arguments. And I'm like, Michelle, had to do my work, Pam.
Yes.
And realize I'm more worried about him taking finals than he is. I had to let go.
I know.
And I was so pissed. I was like, I'm going to have to let this go. And I backed up and let go. And guess what? He missed 9 days of school. I had like, he's out golfing, I'd go to work and I'd come home and he's out golfing. I'm like, I thought you were in bed sick. No. And Mom, you're overbearing. Okay. I'm like, what I had to come to terms with were so many things as a parent. Number one, my child may not even graduate from high school. I really had to go here in my brain. I was he may not graduate. He may go and maybe not go to college, not do a 4-year degree. He may go to a 2-year school, like a community college. And not only that, he may not go to school at all. He was working at the time at a car wash. I'm like, he may just continue to work at the car wash. And that was hard for me because where I lived with my children, everyone asked the question, where's Grammy going to school? It wasn't, is he going to college? It was, where is he going to college? So I had to come to terms. This was my own work. I had to get myself out of the way and let him do his path. And I mean, he pushed me so hard the senior. I literally let go. I go, okay, I'm letting go here. You do whatever the hell you want to do. I'm letting go. And it worked out. And I'm not saying it always works out, but any comments on letting go and the importance of it?
That's a perfect actually story of describing what it takes, because it's like you, as a parent, you can't impose your hopes, your wishes and your dreams for your children onto them. You have to let them cook up their own. And and you were working harder at it than he was. And you never want to do that with a teenager.
And I was. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And I find this with so many parents. I mean, like so many. And I listen, I'm like, holy crap, that's me. And I get it. And watching him go through what he went through was so hard. But I did my own work. I had to get in touch with how does it feel for me? Because my younger son was playing soccer all the time. So I'd go to soccer games and guess what? Everyone would say, where's Grammy going to college? And I'm like, and I finally had to say out loud, you know what? I don't even know if he's going to go to college because he can't even make it through freaking high school. Why? Where's your son going? Mine's going to such and such. Okay, great. And then I would feel shame. I would feel off. That was my work. That's not my son's work. So I find parents try to manipulate their kids to make the parent feel better.
Right.
And I did my own work around it. And then I was clean. And I said, I don't know where he's going to go to school or if he's going to go to school. And I'm now okay with it. And then I could truly let go. So I say this to parents, please do your own work because it will not only help you, but it'll help your kid become. And then my son he ended up graduating. Thank God. I almost had to get a letter from a doctor because he missed so many days. The school was sending notes and I showed him the notes. And I remember one day I sat down with him and I said, and this is when I was clean though, Pam. And I said, listen, I said, I've gotten another letter from school. You've missed 9 or 10 days. This 10 is the max. And if you miss more than 10, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to graduate. And I was so calm. I was not shaming with my tone. And I gave him the letter and I said, here's the letter. I just wanted to let you know I am out of it. So if you want to continue to miss school, you're either going to have to get your GED, you may not graduate, and I'm okay with whatever you decide because now this is on you. This is your life. And I just want you to know I'm not going to be involved in this anymore because I realize I've been way too involved and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I let it go. And I left him with that letter. And I said, if you want to stay working at Miles Car Wash, that's okay. I'm really, truly okay with if that's what you want to do. And I left his bedroom. And he had like 3 months of school left. Never missed another day. And you know what I have to say? If he did, I still would have been okay with it. And then he went on to graduated high school. He did fine. Went on to undergrad. Ended up getting straight A's. And we were all like, wait. And he was never a straight A student in high school. And I was like, and we've all sat down with him, even like my other family members, like, what happened? And he said it was when you came in and you had that conversation with me. He goes, you weren't even mad anymore. And I said, no, I wasn't. I had let it go. That conversation changed him. But I have to say, it might not have turned out as well as it did because he went on and now, straight A's in undergrad, went on. Now he's in, he went to England for grad school, straight A's again. He's very pleasing. I use this term. He's very pleasing to the ego. I can be really proud, but I'm really not even attached to that. I find myself, I'm like, yep, it's nice. He's in England. Yep. He's getting his grad school degree. He's done almost. And it doesn't fill me up And I'm
Good.
so freaking glad about that.
Yeah.
Because if he dropped out in the middle of grad school, I'd be okay with it because I realized it's not my life, Pam.
No. And when kids do make choices to please their parents, it takes them longer than to find themselves.
Right.
Because they're looking to please or give glow to their parents, and they don't want to disappoint them. And that's too much enmeshment. So no, that's a great story of letting go. That's a great example of letting go. You take ownership. This is your life. And I've seen that over and over again with some of the kids and the parents I've worked with, where I coach the parents to let go. Let him fail. So what if he gets Fs? See what happens. And then I also say that kids are great self-correctors. They'll self-correct their path if you let them.
And that's what he did. Let them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have to lose the attachment we have to our children.
Exactly.
We're too attached to their outcome and the damn grades they're getting and how many AP classes. We are pushing our kids so freaking hard.
Oh, the pressure they're under to succeed and perform is crazy. In fact, I think it's the root system for all this epidemic of anxiety that you hear about. And,
totally. Yeah. I 100% agree. In fact, speaking of that, I think we need to spend, instead of so much time with our kids, pushing them to do, all these AP classes and honors and college credits and all that. And I did some of that. I was there specifically with my older one until I learned better. But I remember when one of my kids, because I would always hang out, in the kitchen, and all the kids would come in after school. And I remember I don't remember which friend group it was, but a couple of kids stayed behind one time, and they're like, they knew that I was into meditation and all this. And the friends said, I said, how are you guys doing? And a couple of them said, I don't know, I've got some weird voice in my head. Something's not right. And I feel kind of shaky. I'm like, that's called anxiety. They're like, really? And I was like, God, these freaking kids have no idea what's going on inside of them. They're driven to do sports and travel sports and all the classes and the best colleges and the best of this. And it's like, they didn't even know. And they said, well, what's anxiety? And I was, they knew what the term anxiety meant, but they were going to their friend group saying, what do I do? And of course, it's like, have a beer, have a Xanax. They were talking about Xanax. I'm like, no. And I started talking with them about I said, let me explain to you. And I remember one of my girls, or one of the girlfriends, their group had come over, and I talked to them about, this is what anxiety is, you guys. This is what depression looks like, feels like in the body and in the mind. And we had this whole talk about the inner critic. Pam, they had never heard of the inner critic. And I realized how sad that is to me.
I know. I wish they'd have an AP class in teaching kids about how to be in touch with their emotions,
100%,
how to be in good relationships. I mean, the stuff that life requires of us, but
it's freaking life. And these poor kids that are committing suicide. When I hear of a kid that is committing suicide, it breaks my heart. These kids, I'm like, it's not necessary. Like, give them an outlet to go to speak so that they can purge everything that's going on inside of them and teach them how to feel their emotions. Mm-hmm. And it makes me so sad. But I had this talk with these kids about the inner critic. They thought they were the only ones that had this harsh inner voice, and they were shaming themselves. Yep. And if you saw these kids, Pam, they dressed well, in sports, looked beautiful on the outside. Like, you would never guess. They were like so enlightened during this conversation. Anyway, this is what we need in schools. Less AP and more how to manage your emotions.
Like emotional intelligence, relational intelligence. Yeah. Think of how that would change our world. Yeah.
I'm hoping some of my adult chair coaches have actually talked about bringing this in schools, and I 100% support that. That would be incredible.
Me too. Yeah.
So letting go and letting kids become whoever it is that they're here to become is essential, and parents doing their own work. And the last thing I just wanted to talk about was the grief. Again, when these kids leave the nest at age 18, 19, whatever it is, parents need to understand even if you have 6 kids at home, when one leaves, it's going to hit you. Like there's grief that's going to happen. Can you just talk a little bit about that and what the parents need to do around that and what they can expect? And
well, again, I think that parents and kids are closer than they've ever been. And I think that grief is losing that connection because they know that when they're sending their kids out into the big world, they're going to attach to all these other people. And I don't know, sometimes I think the grief should also be, how could they turn it into congratulating themselves for a job well done?
Yeah.
We are launching our children successfully into the world. Let's high five each other. And so part of it, I think, is not just have it be about grief, but also have it be about accomplishment. And because I think too many parents just focus on the sadness of it instead of the joy of it. And so I think there could be an offset of joy to the grief.
Yeah, so many parents say that there's a void. They feel the void. They don't know what to do with themselves. And and they want that kid to fill the void, right?
Right. But that's when because I work with couples, and that's when I say to the parents, maybe you need to turn toward each other a little bit more. Instead of, you're no longer getting any of your needs met through your children, get your needs met through your partnership and stuff like that. So the grief should subside once they see their kids thriving and doing well. I think some of it is worry too about
for sure.
Yeah. So,
I don't care how old our kids are. I think that, and I don't know because I only have a 20. How old are my kids? 20, almost 24 and almost 21. I think I'll always worry about them. I don't care if they're 50 years old, right?
Yeah.
But even as they go to college and then some, we've got to keep letting go and letting them become and letting go and letting them become. Yes. And when they come back to us, I have worked with, like I said, some teenagers, and when they've come back to me and they've said, or they've come to me, and even a lot of my son's friends would come over and talk to me and they'd say, I can't talk to my mom about this, or my parents, can I talk to you? And I've always said to all of my son's friends, anytime you talk to me, this is a vault. I am a safe place for you. This will never leave my kitchen. What do you want to talk about? And man, the things they say, I feel so honored, to sit and just be in that energy with them and the things that they want to share. But so even when they go to college, some of the kids have shared with me, well, I want to do this and I want to change what I'm doing. And my mom would never let me, or my father would be so upset. My father always wanted me to be a doctor. My father would always wanted me to be a whatever and play ball in college. And we've got to let that go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where is the fine line between when we see our kids' potential? Because I've had parents say this to me, but they have such potential. I need to push them over here because they're only 18. They're only 21. So what do you say to the parents that would say that to you?
I would say, let your kid find their own potential.
Oh, I wish I could drop the mic. Mic drop. Let your kids find their own potential.
And
see it within themselves.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's hard, and I think anyone that's listened to my show knows my story about my younger son, Blake, who was this like superstar soccer player, like in the news, his senior year, he was in the newspaper every single week. Everyone used to ask me, where is he? Please tell me he's going to play soccer in college. It was my dream. He started playing when he was 3 years old. He always has been one of the best on the team and just a superstar. And his senior year, even his coaches and I would talk, and they're like, you name it, he can get in anywhere. We'll get him a scholarship. Like this kid can go So I am like, I loved watching him play soccer. It was just so fun. And oh my gosh, Pam, his senior year, I remember him going out to dinner with his coaches and I said, Blake, you got to figure out what you want to do. And he decided no to soccer. Not in front of him, I cried a few times because it was my dream for him. And I'm like, but there's so much talent. Like, holy crap, there's so much talent. And you could have gotten a full ride somewhere and you're not going to take. And I was like, okay. And to his face, I was like, I respect your decision. He goes, I just don't want to have a full-time job in college, and that would be soccer. And I said, okay, Blake. And then I'd walk away and cry. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But this is the kid of mine that was so driven since he was a baby. And I just want to share this story because I think some parents will relate, or maybe not to the part of the story I'm going to tell, because I'm going to guess probably everyone listening will not relate to this part of the story, but it's pretty funny in my opinion now. So he ended up going to school, always wanted to go to Chapel Hill. We didn't live in North Carolina. He could not get in because we were still in Tennessee. But he wanted a big school where he could watch football games or basketball games. That was him, huge into sports. And his freshman year went into UT, and he said the party scene is crazy, but it is everywhere. I mean, any college, you're going to have a damn party scene. I mean, let's face it.
Yep.
But in November, he said, I don't think I want to stay going to school here. And I was like, well, where do you want to go? He goes, I really feel this pull to go out west, like Colorado. And he had started meditating because one of his friends got him into meditating, not dear old mom, but his friend. Yeah. And he was getting into meditation and climbing and a lot of outdoorsy stuff. And it was so fun to watch because his older brother had prepared me to let go. And I said, I want you to follow your heart. If that feels right, then you go. So he applied. And again, COVID hit. So all that got messed up. Anyway, he ended up transferring then his sophomore year to Chattanooga because that has that more of like a sort of like a Boulder-ish feel. And still talked about moving west. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward my story. Finished out at Chattanooga. And he says, this isn't good for me. I have to be out west. It's a call that I feel on the inside of me, Mom. I have to move out west. So one thing led to another. I had a friend that lived in Washington. She said, oh, I've got a friend that lives here. He can move out west and actually live on this guy's property. He's got a few tiny houses, but he's got land, Blake could come live on and just explore living out here in Washington State. I said, okay. So anyway, so Blake comes to me and I hooked him up with this guy that owns this house. And I don't know any of these people, but I trusted my friend very much to give me a good source of information, people for him. Anyway, so Blake said, I move in. I'm so excited. These are a great group of people. I'm going to go experience out west. I'm going to apply to some schools out there, maybe. And I might take a few years of school off. And it was hard for me to hear. And I said, whatever you feel, I said, I would prefer that you finish college, but if that's where you're not, if that's doesn't feel right to you, then that's okay. Anyway, everyone needs to sit down to hear this because what he said to me was, I said, so you're going to move out to one of those tiny houses? He says, no, there isn't any room in this guy's. There's like 2 or 3 tiny houses on this guy's land out in Washington State. He says, I can bring my tent and just live in my tent. And I said, let me get this straight. You are basically not going to go to college for right now. And you're going to go live in a tent on this guy's property. And he goes, yeah. And I said, how does that feel to you? He goes, like a damn dream, Mom. Oh. And I said, wow. He goes, this makes me so happy. And I'm like, okay. Now for Michelle, that sounds like living in hell. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's like the worst idea in the world. Like, I don't want to live in a tent for months on end. And I know. And he's like, this is a dream. And and I just kept Pam letting go. I'm like, if that's what you want to do. And he drove his car all the way out to Washington. He lived in that tent. And I just kept letting go. And one of the tiny houses became available. He moved in there for a bit. And now he's back in a tent and he's having the time of his life. He is meeting all these people. He is now doing an online classes, which I thought he wasn't going to go to college. Again, I just kept letting go. He's going to college now out of San Francisco online because of COVID right now.
Yeah, he's finding his way.
And this kid that was going to drop out of college has now come back to us and said, I think I want to do a double master's now. I'm like, what? Okay. And again, I just Botox bro it. I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. Okay. You want to do double masters. Okay. But before he didn't. So I'm detached from it though. If he were to say I'm done, I'm like, that's good. If he just does a double master's, I'm good with that too. Whatever you want. I don't care. But his path and his journey is unfolding right in front of my eyes. It's the most beautiful thing.
I know it is beautiful. I tell kids and parents, hey, they're going to live to be 120, if not more. What's the hurry? Yes. And shouldn't the 20s decade be their experimental decade of let's try that, let's try this, let's try that? Why would you want your kid to settle down into some, the pressure to, I want my 4.0 so I can get into a good school, so I can get a good job, so I can And it's like that path is for so few people. The true path. And so I love it when kids zigzag through their 20s. So your son is zigzagging, but think of what he's learning and what he's finding out about himself. It's beautiful.
He's a different person than he was even a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago. Yeah. He went from, partying. Now he doesn't drink. He meditates every day. Yeah. And I'm like, wow. And I just keep watching his life unfold. Never would I dream this for him when he was a senior in high school. He was going to college to play soccer and, go to the great school. And now I'm like, all right. And it keeps unfolding and everything might change in a month. And that's okay. It's not my life. I'm focusing on my life and I let him focus on his. And I'm those way out here on the giant guardrails, but way out now, letting him figure it out on his own. They're stronger because of it. So anyway, any last words for our parents?
Well, I liked your theme. Let them go and let them become who they're supposed to be. Yeah. And I think that the letting go is on the parent side and the let them become who they're supposed to be is on their side. And, and it works in tandem with each other. It's just a beautiful thing.
And they really will. And it's not on our timeline. These parents have to remember they're going to become whoever it is they're here to become. And it's going to keep changing and morphing and growing. And they're going to keep becoming their whole lives. Like you said, they might live to their 120. They don't reach, there's no end point. There's no finish line.
Right. You
just keep growing and evolving and becoming. Yep. And we have to drop those expectations. I've worked with many adults that have sat across from me and said, they're in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s. Well, I remember this one guy in particular, he says, I became an accountant and I've been miserable, but my father was an accountant. My 3 brothers were accountants and my grandfather was too. And they wanted me to be part of the family business. And he goes, and I've been depressed ever since college. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He goes, I wanted to be a teacher. I said, so do it now.
Yep.
And he goes, I didn't even have a choice. My parents told me what I had to major in. I was like, if my parents, I can't even imagine like not doing psychology for me. I can't even imagine.
Right? Yeah.
I would be depressed too.
Yeah. So kids, they can't live prescribed lives. They have to find their own way. Yep.
And our job is to love and support whatever choices they make.
Absolutely.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been great to do this with you. It's fun.
I love it. And I mean, your wealth of information and thanks for taking time today with all of us.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
I hope you all enjoyed the show today with Dr. Pam Staples and I talking all about teens. I just want to say, no matter who you are as a parent listening to this, please give yourselves a pat on the back. Raising kids, it's honest to God, one of the most difficult things we can do. It is a tough job. And let me say, it is. I work my butt off with this current career of mine. Raising kids was tougher because there's that emotional component and they push our buttons. It is a tough job. So I hope that today's show has helped you in some way. But no matter what or where you are with your kids for today, please give yourself a pat on the back. You totally deserve it. You're doing a great job. We're always doing the best that we can with what we know. So I hope today gave you a few more tips to help you with this journey of raising kids. Pam Staples is at myrelationallife.com. Unfortunately, she's not taking individual clients any longer, but her other passion is working with couples. So she works with teenagers and adolescents and couples or kids and couples. She is taking more couples if you are interested in seeing her for that. Last thing is, do not forget, we've got the Adult Chair Coaching Certification is open. And if you want more information on that, that's at theadultchair.com/certification. And be on the lookout for some live streams I'm going to be doing on Instagram and Facebook, as well as live Q&As in our Zoom room. So check your email, check social. We'll be announcing that very soon. We'd love to have you, regardless of your background. If you are passionate about helping people become healthy, then come join us. Then I want you. If you love the Adult Chair, I don't care what your background is, I will teach you how to be an incredible coach. Would love to have you. All right. That's it, you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week, and I'll see you seated right here next week in the adult chair.